with me several times and talked to my dad a lot about how he grew up, and got to know most of the family here. So I have to say that I'm so happy to see some of you who I haven't seen in a long time, and to meet some of you who came from far. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon. I'm 34 years old, graduated from University of Michigan in 1999, and then I got my master's in public health at Columbia in 2003. So I work at NYU Medical Center in healthcare management. And I live with two of my sisters, with Tina, who's my older sister, she could be here today, and with Ashley, our MC. And I'm happy to say that I actually have a new nephew. So he was just born about 7 weeks ago. His name is Jesus Alexander Manzano Rodriguez. So I think during the course of this planning and just growing up, my dad has always been kind of a very aggressive person about taking pictures and video camera and all that stuff. And when you're younger and growing up, it's a little annoying if you're not into that. But as I've gotten older, I really started to appreciate those moments. We started transcribing some of those videos, put them up on YouTube and Facebook, and you get to see a piece of history. And at the time, you know, these moments are fleeting, but when you see it on video and photographs, those are the important moments, times when we spend with family. And now, you know, we're taking pictures outside. I sat there and thought to myself that we're all going to look back at these moments and enjoy our first reunion. Hopefully this is going to be an ongoing thing. So it just makes me happy to be a part of it, to be part of this family. So thank you all.
I don't even know what I'm going to say.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley. You've seen me a few times.
I don't want to take this.
So I wrote this pretty long bio, and it says a lot of stuff, and I actually don't really know what to say right now. But I guess I will say that coming here is an experience in itself, because there's so many faces that I've never seen before, but now actually associating them to names means a lot. When you have a family, you know, you grow up close with your siblings or your first cousins, second or third if you're lucky, but at some point people split up and they fragment and they all begin to create their own families and put those traditions on toward their kids, and sometimes we don't get to see each other. And so being able to look back and hear everyone's stories about how they grew up back in the Philippines and then comparing it to ours, I know that as we move forward in this program, the stories are going to change a lot. But the one thing to remember is to know exactly where you came from. And I think that growing up as a Manzano, there are certain core values that you learn, and maybe at the time you resent them or you don't really know where they're coming from. But I know that growing up, my dad always pushed us to excel, always pushed us to work hard. And even though I didn't really understand why, now I see exactly where that work ethic pays off, because so many of us are actually are able to do what we want and pursue our own dreams, whereas all our parents wanted to do was create more opportunity for themselves. And so moving forward, I think that we're in a great place, and this is an awesome starting point for us to actually start coming back together from all of our different places, and hopefully this is something that we can continue on.
Oh boy, I can't follow you people.
Yes, you can.
Okay, I'm Lauren Manzano. I'm Ashley and Katrina's sister. I'm the youngest of the 4 girls. I'm 21. I'm in going to start my last year at Michigan State University. My major is human development and family studies. And everyone always, they don't know what that means. They think it's human resources or something. It's like a combination of social work, psychology, sociology. My focus is child and youth studies, so I work with kids. Right now I volunteer at a preschool. And I also work in an organization called the VOB Club. It's like a college charter of Johnson International. It's a club that advocates for women's rights around the world. I guess being a Manzano or It's nice to share that, and also seeing like, you know, a cultural difference between me and like my American friends. We're so close to our family, and like in Michigan, we have a party for everything: birthday, christening, graduation. There's always like a celebration, and it's so normal to me. And I talk to some of my friends, even the ones who are Asian, not the ones who are just Caucasian. They don't have many cousins, and I thought it was so strange because I have like 50 cousins, and I don't know who is my first cousin, who is my second cousin. Oh, this person's not even really related to me, but I call them, you know, tita, whatever. I don't really know how close we are, but I know that we're close. And with my friends, like I said, they don't even know their aunts and uncles. They don't know their cousins that well. And I always, you know, I used to think that was so strange, but it's really important to me. And I feel like, you know, with my kids, I hope that it is that way. That I do know all my cousins were so close. Like in New York with my sisters and our cousin Liz, like they're so close. And I mean, like it's nice to have that, to feel like you're not distant. So, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. And it's nice to see everyone here who came from afar. I know like a lot of us did, and some of you I haven't met or haven't seen in like over 10 years, and I don't even like remember, but it's nice to reconnect, and hopefully we can do like, you know, another big reunion, and so the entire family can meet. This is only such a small part of the Manzano family. So, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. I'm actually going to sit. That's okay with all of you. So I also wrote a bio, which hopefully some of you will get the opportunity to read. In talking to Mr. Manzano, you know, we had a conversation. What do I say? What do I talk about? And he said, well, you know, talk a little bit about your background, how you come from, you know, two very different families. My mother's family are from Zaragoza, Spain, and my father's family are from Tampa, Florida. My mother's family obviously are Spanish, and my father's family are African American. Very interesting background. So what I'm going to do is, I hope this goes well, I'm going to tell 4 different quick vignettes. Just really interesting stories in my background, and there are a lot of them. So the first story is going to be called Yayo versus the priest. So my mother and father had a whirlwind romance in the early 70s. And it was a time of great social change in Spain. Our famous dictator, Generalissimo Franco, was on his way out, and the power was being transitioned into a democracy. And so, you know, young Spaniards had very different ideas about tradition from even their parents. So my mother made up her mind she was going to marry my father secretly, so that my grandfather knew nothing about it. My grandfather was a famously surly man. He was very ill-tempered, and they did their best to keep the marriage from my grandfather, but the Catholic Church in Spain would have none of that. They said, no, in our country, the father gives permission for the daughter to be married. And they said, well, you know, my father's never going to give permission for me to be married off. And he said, oh, don't worry, señorita. I will go talk to your father myself. So the priest goes to talk to my grandfather, and my grandfather just explodes. Out of my house! Kicks the priest out of my house, out of his house. So the priest returns to my mother and my grandmother, and he says, Señora, I've talked to your husband, and he's a very unpleasant man. And the Catholic Church will be happy to give you permission to marry your husband. So the next vignette is called Jose and Josefina. So my great-grandfather, Jose Aviano, was a self-taught man. He taught himself how to be an engineer. He built a mill and a water well and a lot of really important things for the small village that he lived in. And, you know, this is a time in Spain in which your class, your family, your background, really, determined who you were allowed to be. So this idea of someone, teaching themselves how to become an engineer and succeeding and all that was really new. It was very progressive. So he raised his daughters in a very similar fashion. He didn't have a son. He had one daughter. So he raised his daughter as if she was his son. Taught her a lot of his business. She was the first woman in her part of Spain to get a driver's license and drive. Luckily for us, those values passed on. My mother's always been very progressive and so on and so forth. The third vignette is about this mysterious great-great-grandfather that I have. He was a gentleman from South Carolina who moved to Florida, changed his name, and completely reinvented his life. He would not talk a lot about his past, but what we did know was that he was literate at a time in which a lot of African Americans in the South did not know how to read. We're talking 1880, 1890, maybe a generation after the Civil War. He owned land, he had a lot of money. And again, he was just a person a little ahead of his time. He had figured out ways to kind of maneuver around the restrictions at that time in society. And so, I count that again as a tradition that, that we've been able to inherit. And so, I just, there are many stories like this in my family, but I tell all these stories to say that because I have ancestors who are not afraid to challenge the limitations of their time, not just for themselves, but for the generations to come. They understood that if they won these battles today, the generations to come would be able to fight more important battles tomorrow. So these kind of family reunions, these kind of efforts to keep the family together, these kind of efforts to pass the torch from one generation to another are very dear to me, and I'm very happy to see that the Manzano tradition is so in line with my own tradition, and hopefully we'll continue to contribute to it. So, thank you very much.
Does that mean it's running on?
And the rest is in the Bible.